Hi folks, welcome to this Thursday upload of my demonstration, my watercolour demonstration. Howard Jones here. For the next couple of weeks I'm going to be offering these videos as demonstrations. So I'm working from a photo. It's a beautiful area, the Wye Valley in South Wales. And the river in question is the River Wye. I'm working from a photo that, if you want to have a look at the photo, it is on the screen at the beginning of this demonstration. But this is purely a demonstration. I'm just going to sort of talk you through some of the colour choices and some of the methods and the sequence in which I like to work these sort of paintings, these landscapes in. So I'm mindful to keep the area that is actually the reflective water, the river itself, free of paint for as long as possible. So I sort of cut around the shapes, as you can see me doing here. I'm using ultramarine blue, lavender, a colour called fuchsia, just on the edge of my palette there on the right hand side of the screen, and there's a bit of cadmium yellow on the palette. So my greens, I always make sure, if you watch some of my other videos, I explain in depth my use of creating greens, how I like to create greens in varying strengths and colour temperatures. So everything's pretty wet and wet here. The sky was a wash of lavender with a tiny bit of fuchsia at the horizon. Then I started introducing mixes of ultramarine blue and cadmium yellow, and that same mix is being used throughout the landscape to create these lovely greens. There's also a little bit of colour called rose madder, which is a lovely sort of earthy red, and which gives that sort of warm sunshine type sort of hit to the path on the right hand side there. I'm working wet in wet at the moment. This is a mop brush with a good point, and I'm just laying out the sunlit distant mountains there. By now the sky has dried, so I'm painting against a dry surface on the skyline. That's how I can keep those sort of orange warm looking mountains in the distance sort of hard edged. I'm just lifting out some marks here to indicate a path on the right. And just playing between warm colours and cool colours. Introducing stronger hits of cadmium yellow in some places. They may appear green, but because there's a lot of blue and existing paint on the surface, the cadmium yellow becomes a sort of greeny colour. I speed dry at this stage because I want to sort of trap the shapes that I've got to stop them developing any further. And this is a very, very weak wash of ultramarine blue in the water, so as not to change too much the tonal value, the high tonal value of the water. And that's just a mix of alizarin crimson and lavender that I'm just indicating some shapes in the distant mountains there. Using a flat brush now. It's a 1-inch flat brush with mixed fibres, so it'll be partly synthetic and partly natural fibre. So you could, if you want another look at the photo, it was on screen a moment ago, just run back and pause the video and you'll see the photo. There's an individual tree here, poplar tree, a species of tree called poplar, and I had some difficulty with this to start off with. I just felt as though I'm using a rigger brush. I quite like using a rigger brush for certain types of trees. But I just felt it was getting a bit heavy, a bit too warm. So I make adjustments as I work through towards the end of the painting to that particular tree. So I'm going much darker now. You can see I've just lifted out a lot of that tree there with a piece of tissue, with the intention of me going back into it when it's ready. So going a lot darker. This will be a mix of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And I'm just looking to make, this is a large round brush. It's probably about a size 16, something like that. Hasn't got a very good point on it, but it's quite useful for making these shapes, masses of trees. Now I'm going back in with the rigger brush into that tree again, and I'm sort of a bit happier with it. It's amazing because in the photo that tree looks abnormally tall, but it's actually quite accurate to the photo. So just dancing around with some with the rigger brush here with a much darker mix. This will be ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And by doing that, particularly in the foreground, of course, it brings some perspective. Those little dark, rich mixes that sort of decorate the foreground give a sense of proximity, bringing that foreground a bit closer, and at the same time pushing, of course, everything else further back. So there's my size 16 round brush again with a pretty rounded point on it. As I say, it's good for shaping, and I use it a lot off the belly. That's in other words, I do use the blunt pointed end of it, but I use it a lot off the belly. That's the side of the brush. So by dropping water in and just lifting out textures, I aim to create a sort of woodland type scene over on these sides of the river. And I'm speed drying again. I feel as though I need to trap the painting where it is. So everything that was moving wet in wet is now halted. It's sort of held up now to a point where I want it. So as soon as I see it, as soon as the painting starts to look as to how I want it, I speed dry it in order to stop it moving. If you're watching this for the first time, do please consider subscribing. If you actually want the full-length, detailed tutorial of this, please just pop over to my website and drop me an email. You can join the live classes or buy individual lessons off the website. If there's anything there that you can't find, please drop me a message and I'd be glad to let you know the availability of these tutorials. So I've mixed up a sort of purple here with a flat brush. So this would be mostly ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. Just to get further depth. And often, as you see me doing here, what I do is I often deliver the larger areas of paint and then manipulate them to some degree with a smaller round brush. So I'm just looking to create the dynamics now. Looking for the lighter areas against the darker areas, making sure that I'm happy with the temperatures throughout, that they don't get too cool in the foreground, they don't get too warm in the background. And my reflections that you can see in the water are simply from me dragging the flat brush vertically down off the paint. So I'm just using, I do this a lot with my paintings, particularly my landscape paintings. I just spatter with sometimes a bit of water, sometimes a bit of white gouache. It just adds a little sort of, a sort of lively texture to it, as though you can imagine airborne particles. And just dancing around here with a rigger brush with some very weak white gouache in the brush, again to create a sort of slightly powdery effect of creating distance. And I'm just using a small flat brush here with water in it to lift a few areas out again. And drawing towards the end of the painting here, put the mount around it to see, to get a better idea of the balance. The mount is a great tool. It's I always have it to hand towards the end of a painting because it allows you to isolate the painting from all the paraphernalia that sits around your painting on your easel top and your workspace. And it really does help you to see the painting in terms of balance of everything, tonal values, temperatures, shapes, etc. I'm decided here to bring a little bit of that lavender colour down into the foreground water, just to bring some sort of cohesion, because it's used in the sky, you'd expect it to appear in the water. So that was my logic behind that. A little bit, I think I'd take up a little bit of fuchsia, the colour fuchsia, which is a lovely sort of pinky purple colour, and add that just to the furthest end of the river. So there we are, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this. Do please subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and I'd love to hear your comments. I will be uploading on a weekly basis, so if you want notifications as to when these go up, exactly when these go up, then hit the little bell icon, and you will get notifications as soon as they arrive on my channel. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this one. Welcome any comments. See you at the next one.